very, I would say, outstanding group of panelists today with us. Practitioners and experts from ILO, Swiss Contact, UNDP, IIX. Uh, Let me briefly introduce them. We have Mr. Gunjan Dallakoti, is the head of program and SME development specialist at the International Labour Organization in Bangladesh. So we expect that he will help us, to unfold some of the things on social dimensions of ESG, considering that he's working in ILO. And then we have Mr. Tohidul Islam. He's a senior manager at Swiss Contact Bangladesh, and they are implementing currently a project called Progress. I hope some of you know about this project. They're trying to promote green growth in the ready-made garments sector through skills development. So we hope that we will hear something from that perspective from him. We have Dr. Mehruna Islam Choudhury. She's an economist in UNDP Bangladesh's Transformative Economic Policy Program. She has immense experience working with the government and private sector. So we will hear from her about the policy gaps and the role of private sector in promoting ESG practices in Bangladesh. We have Mr. Director of Advisory and Partnership at the Impact Investment Exchange, IIX Bangladesh. So IIX in Bangladesh basically focuses on sustainable financing, right? So right now you're working on orange bonds. So we would like to hear from him on the capital market issues. A brief note before we start. We were supposed to, have the country manager of H&M, but he will not be able to join, unfortunately. So we wanted to hear the buyer's perspective from him, but we hope that from the floor we will get some questions on those, and our panelists will help us to get some of the answers of those questions. So, to be for quite some time, so I hope that we will have a bit informal structure in terms of having the discussions, and we will try to get engaged as much as possible during the open discussions. So let's start the discussion with a brief presentation to just set the tone. I don't know whether you will be able to see the slides. So is it okay?
That's fine.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Great. Basically, I will try to cover why ESG is important. Why are we talking so much about ESG? And where does Bangladesh stand at this moment in terms of promoting or practicing ESGs? And I will try to share some of the data on ESG or some of the related data that will help us to understand the whole landscape, ESG landscape in Bangladesh. And we will also try to understand what are the opportunities that are lying forward from the perspectives of promoting ESG in Bangladesh. So why these ESG conversations matter at this moment? I believe there are four critical reasons for that. One is, of course, the regulation. So you can see from the slide that the EU Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, we call it in brief CSRD, now covers around 50,000 firms globally And supply chain due diligence laws in Europe and the US are reshaping sourcing decisions for emerging market exporters. The second critical reason is capital, which I believe is very related to what IX does. So ESG leveled assets exceeds USD 40 trillion globally by 2024. International investors and DFIs are increasingly conditioning lending and equity on credible ESG disclosure and performance. The third critical reason is the supply chain accountability. Global buyers, especially in fashion, food, and electronics, are now demanding. I mean, this is for the tier one and tier two suppliers. Uh, uh, Now require tier one and tier two suppliers to demonstrate ESG compliance. So for Bangladesh, this makes the situation a bit complex, right? Complex in terms of accessing the market. The fourth reason, I believe, is the climate vulnerability. So this is really important when you talk about Bangladesh, because Bangladesh, we all know, Bangladesh ranks among the world's top 10 most climate vulnerable uh, nations. And that's why environmental dimension of ESG is not optional. It is an economic survival imperative for us, for Bangladesh. All right. So where does we where do we stand? Where does Bangladesh stand? What are the strengths? Where do we lack? So, in terms of strengths, I would say that there are a few things that we can consider or we can take into consideration. And I think we have the ground uh, where we can build on, right? So, in Bangladesh, we can see that Bangladesh is kind of like world's largest concentration of LEED certified green factories. Bangladesh Bank's sustainable finance policy and green taxonomy in place since 2020. And we see active participation in international labor standards, dialogue post Rana Plaza. And we're also observing growing pipeline of blended finance and impact investment. And the last thing is this is very I would say this is a positive thing and side or development from the government perspective. The national adaptation plan is very much aligned with the E element of ESG, but there are some structural gaps for sure. Uh, I have highlighted some of these structural gaps here. So one of them is there is no mandatory ESG disclosure standards for the listed or large private companies. And ESG adoption heavily concentrated in RMG. Other sectors largely, I would say, untouched so far. And another issue is the SMS. They are largely excluded from ESG finance and frameworks at this moment. And also we see that the gender and social equity metrics symmetrically absent from reporting practices. The final thing is weak domestic ESG data infrastructure is another issue that we need to discuss a bit. And reliance on international rating systems, this is something that we also need to, look into. So, as I mentioned at the start of my presentation, that I will share some of the data that will help us to understand the whole ESG landscape. At least will give some, sense of where we stand at this moment. So, here we have some numbers. You can see that one of the achievements so far for Bangladesh is that we have more than 700 LEED certified green factories. This is the largest concentration in the world. But as I mentioned in one of my previous slides, that we are very climate vulnerable, right? Bangladesh is one of the most climate vulnerable countries in the world. So if we share the rank, it's like we are the seventh most climate vulnerable nation globally. Uh, I have also mentioned here the number, exports number, I would say. So exports of goods in fiscal year 2024-25, we exported 43.6 billion US dollar, uh, and of that, 85% contributions come from the RMG sector. And ESG compliance increasingly, you can sense that is tied to market access. Having said that, this is very frustrating. I don't know whether this word is a bit strong, but this is the fact that less than 5% of listed firms publish any form of ESG or sustainability report domestically, since it's not mandatory, right? That's where the problem comes from. I hope that Tawhid Bhai will reflect on this. Uh, so far, Bangladesh Bank has disbursed around 4 million US dollar equivalent, I mean, green finance. This is a good sign, but still we are lagging behind. I mean, if we talk about the needs, there is a clear gap. So some of the estimates, say that we need almost 14 billion US dollar climate finance each year to meet, the NDC targets by 2030. So we can see that there is a clear gap. This chart talks about the trajectory. So here we see the trends of green and sustainable finance disbursement in Bangladesh. Clearly, we see an increasing trends, and almost if you compare with like between 2016 and 2023, the green finance disbursement has increased by uh, four times, but still it's not enough. We are not there. I mean, 450 billion BDT, it's like $4 billion roughly. So as I mentioned, we have a demand of 14 billion US dollar climate finance. So there is a clear gap we can understand. All right. So I mean, there are structural gaps, there are issues that we need to discuss, but we also need to understand what are the opportunities that are, waiting for us in the future. Uh, when we talk about the promotion of ESG practices in Bangladesh. So here I have highlighted three areas. One is, of course, the market access and export competitiveness. Okay, let's take a pause here. Bangladesh is supposed to graduate from least developed countries, right? It was scheduled in 2026, but of course, there is a discussion going on whether Bangladesh should delay this process. I mean, of course, it doesn't depend on Bangladesh. I mean, there are other, factors and stakeholders involved, but it will come maybe 3 years later, right? And Bangladesh will lose the LDC preference when we talk about the trade exports. So let me just share one statistics here. At this moment, Bangladesh enjoys LDC preference, duty free, quota free access, right? And the percentage is like more than 70% of Bangladesh's total exports enjoy duty free, quota free access. So it's huge. So when we graduate from, uh, it will no longer be there. And WTO estimates show that we may lose, I mean, the export may reduce by up to 14%, right? So it's a bit scary, right? And from SANEM, we also try to understand or assess the impact, especially for the EU market. And we saw that if EU strictly impose the ESG measures on Bangladesh, the loss could be up to 30%. So it's huge. It's huge, right? So to improve a lot in terms of ESG practices and increase or strengthen the trade competitiveness. And there is a possibility or opportunity for us waiting to access new markets, or maybe strengthen our position in the existing destinations or markets. So this according to me, this is the first opportunity that we should look into. The second thing is, of course, the capital market. So we talked about the sustainable financing. In Bangladesh, unfortunately, we discussed a lot about sustainable financing, especially from UNDP. We saw that there are discussions going on how we can explore alternative financings. I mean, if you talk about the public financing, it's not enough. The private sector financing, we are unsure. Development financing, it's shrinking. So we talk about some of the innovative concepts nowadays. Say, for example, blended financing, where you pull in all the resources from all the stakeholders, all the state, non-state actors, say, for example, government, development partners, private sector, and create a fund and mobilize to some of the projects or interventions or programs where we will see that implementation leads to sustainable development, where of course ESG comes in. So here we lack, but of course these discussions, I mean, we are doing on sustainable financing and this kind of like innovative financing, green bond, blue bond, blended finance, SDG bonds. I heard something like this, right? UNDP is, I think, having a serious discussion around sustainable bonds. So orange bonds, social bonds. Yeah. So capital market is something we need to explore more, and we need to have concrete, I would say, agenda around this. So this is my second potential area when we talk about, I believe, ESG, ESG practices. And the last thing is people. So one social dimension, right? So when we talk about social dimensions, we always relate this to the welfare of laborers, workers, their well-being. As we know, around 4 million workers work in RMG sector, and majority of these 4 million workers are women. I'm not mentioning the number because there is a confusion in recent time. I mean, some statistics say or indicate that around 60%, some will say 50%, and LFSA is around 40%, maybe less than 40%. So there is a confusion, but let's say majority of these 4 million workers are women. So their well-being matters, right? So here the S or social component of ESG comes in. So this is my third say. All right, so I'm almost done. Let me conclude my presentation by saying that ESG is not a reporting exercise. It is the language through which Bangladesh will negotiate its place in the global economy of tomorrow. Of course, we will explore some questions today. So on labor rights, climate finance, inclusive growth, and credible data. And let's see if we can find some solutions from today's discussion. So let me stop here and let's go to our panelists before we open the floor. So let me start with Mr. Gunjan. Since you work for ILO, and of course, one of the major areas of work for ILO is labor rights. So my question will be, to you around this S element of ESG. So the S in ESG, the social dimension, is arguably the most underdeveloped in Bangladesh's ESG discourse. I mean, of course, Bangladesh is having a lot of discussions around that, but we haven't seen much improvement around this social dimension of ESG. So where do we lack? I mean, what is the problem? We are having so many discussions, dialogues, but nothing happening. I mean, I should not say nothing happening. Nothing is happening, but much haven't happened, right? So what is your reaction on that?
No, thank you so much, Zubair. I hope I'm audible.
Yes.
I'm Kunjan, the program for ILO Bangladesh. Just quick reflection, before I jump into that social yes component of the ESG, let me also give a bit of perspective of how ILO sees ESG, right? I mean, in that sense, how even system basically sees ESG. For us, ESG is evolved form of corporate sustainability, right? I mean, there was initially the corporate philanthropy, let's give back to something to the society, then came the idea of CSR, let's do something nice, some good thing. Then we came up with this kind of concept of the corporate sustainability, where the very idea of sustainable work is to sustain the corporates, to have that sustainability elements embedded into the corporate strategy. Rather than external actors pushing for it, internalizing that sustainability aspects in the corporate. That's what we are talking about, the corporate sustainability. And ESG is one of the framework to operationalize that corporate sustainability through indicators, through targets, through metrics and everything there. And there are different global standards for guiding us what kind of metrics and indicators should be used. The most common are GRI indicators and ISSP indicators. I mean, both of which are really not adopted in the context of Bangladesh, although we are doing a lot of corporate sustainability reporting or ESG reporting kind of thing. Now, let me come into the topic of ESG. We have seen really well. We're trying to practice and investing a lot in terms of corporate sustainability. We see a bit of mixed messaging here. They are essentially trying to invest in the corporate sustainability, but they are sometimes investing in corporate philanthropy. They are mixing up corporate philanthropy with the CSR, with the sustainability. That's why when it comes to ESG reporting, not all the enterprises are able to report, even though they are doing it. Right. So that's one of the claims that I have to put forth here. In regards to social elements of the corporate sustainability, which includes the embedding fundamental principle and rights at work, especially on the CSC, ESG reporting framework. There are like 5 major fundamental principles and rights at work, like freedom of association, collective bargaining, elimination of forced labor, no child labor, no discrimination in the employment with respect to age, sex, gender, and occupational safety and health. So fortunately, Jubair, I slightly contradict with you because the ESG reporting movement in Bangladesh is driven largely by the ready-made garment sector. It's driven by external influence, the compliance requirement for the brands and buyers, the global value chain, in which after Rana Plaza collapse, labor condition was one of the major conditions. That's why if you see efforts put by corporates in reporting ESG or in complying ESG, most of the effort has been concentrated to meet the labor compliance more than anything else, right? Yes, there has been a lot of achievement in terms of the environmental compliance, like largest concentrated LEED certified factory, a lot of work on the environmental side, but biggest concentration of at least the mature industry like RMG and also big conglomerates has been in meeting that labor compliance. That's why it is really a heightened agenda. Recently, government of Bangladesh undertook a comprehensive reform of the labor sector. That also gives that opportunity for the businesses to comply with the ES component of the ESG. Tragically, though, what I have to admit here is ESG in Bangladesh is driven by external actors, not embedded within the companies. Yes, there is an intention among the companies to go for the ESG, but it's still far away from there. It's asked by the brands, you comply, otherwise you will not buy. So there has to be a significant departure from external driven ESG reporting or ESG framework to more internalization of that ESG framework. ESG is a tool for corporate sustainability, longer term growth and development and sustainable enterprises. Similarly, Bangladesh Bank Act has made it mandatory for a banking financial institution to abide by the ESG, right? So both are either regulatory compliance or supply chain compliance. These are only the compliance driven, which is not sustainable, which runs the risk of tick boxing exercise, tick marking exercise, and not actually embedding in it. So that greenwashing thing, tick boxing exercise is happening pretty common here. And while saying that, I'm not discounting the good effort put by the companies here. There has been a lot of effort put here, but these practices are also here. Why this exists? Because there is no nationally agreed framework or nationally agreed benchmark exercise for the ESG. What is ESG looking for? Normally in countries, ESG is trying to achieve that responsible business conduct, nationally mandated minimum standard for the business to abide by business and human rights, in the respect of triple bottom line, right? People, planet, and profit. That mandatory benchmarking exercise has not been done in Bangladesh state. That's why companies are abiding by their brands. Now, it's largely driven by EU compliance or US compliance. Slowly and gradually, it will start coming from the Japan, from Australia. So that gives a lot of confusion and a lot of trouble for the companies as well, which standard to abide to, right? That's why, yes, component is pretty integrated in the businesses, but that from the compliance perspective, it has not been internalized from the business corporate perspective. And there are so many issues affecting that. So I'll stop here, Zubair.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Right. Bringing Mr. Tawhidul Islam here. From Swiss Contact Bangladesh, you have been trying to, help, especially private sector, garments factories to, identify some of the missing links and improve on those missing links. So you are basically focusing on two things. One is, as far as I know, one is skill development, and the other thing is, of course, ESG reporting or sustainability reporting. And here, a huge missing link is the SMS, right? And if you talk about if you talk about the RMG factories, the small factories, or maybe tier three factories, right, are struggling uh, in terms of finding the right solutions for them and keeping up with these transition. So how do you see this? I mean, is it I mean possible for Bangladesh, to promote the ESG practices in Bangladesh, where SMS basically dominate our market?
Thank you. So basically, my impression is, ESG is not inclusive by design at this moment, because what happens is what also Ujjwal has asserted, that it's a risk management tool for the global buyers, and that's how it's practiced in the ready-made garment sector right now. So if ESG stops at the tier one factories, the export-oriented factories within the EPZ, then of course the MSMEs are excluded here. So first, I will actually dig a bit deeper for the audience to understand the problem, and then we can talk how we need to, actually whether we need to include the MSMEs as well in this ESG journey. Because there are three types of kind of the emission factor, right? Globally, this scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3, right? So you emit by buying or burning the energies, you emit the carbon. And scope 3 is actually you indirectly emit the carbon through different ways. So for a global buyer, right, for H&M, for Lindex, who are buying products, R&D products from Bangladesh, their scope 1 and scope 2 emission, that is their direct emission, is very limited. Consider a showroom within the Europe. They have just an AC, they have just the lights. So these are their emissions, their energy emissions. So their largest emission is their scope 3 emission, which is happening in the Gazipur or Chittagong, in their production houses, their suppliers, the R&D factories within Bangladesh. So there, the largest portion of the pollution and the emission is happening. And that's why when the consumer is now saying that we will buy responsibly, we will buy the products, and the tax should have a reflection on the labor standards. That's also Kunjan told that after Rana Plaza, it has the quality has increased sufficiently. But environmentally, they also need to see that these products are kind of produced very ethically, or from recycled products, and so and so. So when the consumers are giving that pressure to the buyers are now giving the pressure to their suppliers. So the export-oriented factories automatically fall in line, and they're actually complying with the whatever the standards the buyers are actually setting, like the net zero pathway or Vision 2050, Vision 2040. Every buyers have their own standards, and the export-oriented factories are actually following those standards. When it comes, now you consider the reality of an export-oriented factory, their scope 1 and scope 2 emission is whatever they are kind of burning within the factories. But their scope 3 emission is actually coming from their subcontracting factories, which is when we say that there are 4,000 factories in Bangladesh, roughly more than 2,000 factories fall under these subcontracting factories. The factories that you see, like for example, a great example can be Rana Plaza itself, or the factories we see, for example, when you cross the Mohali flyover, you will see that those factories, R&D factories, it's released by it's giving the products to the export-oriented factories, and their social compliance standard, their environmental standards are not up to the mark. So for them, it's not actually mandatory to comply with whatever buyers are now asking. So they're automatically excluded from the whole ESG scenario. So here buyers need to actually play their part as well, and we need to. What I see is the problem is it's not like that the MSMEs are not the problem is not in their intent. They're of course interested to apply the ESG, but problem is in their capacity, in their financing, and how they will actually manage this whole process. Another important factor is I thought H&M will be also here. That is ESG currently is an unfunded mandate by the suppliers. Buyers need to also provide the cost of the compliance. And if we do not do that, the MSMEs will be automatically excluded from this whole system. So where we need to work is we need to create an ecosystem of the accountability. ESG should be seen not as a kind of audit heavy exercise. It has to be seen as a kind of capacity building exercise for these whole export oriented factories as well as for the MSMEs. Then the question that is MSMEs can include in this ESG journey and in this green transition. So what I really like is the question that how can ESG automatically translates itself for the MSMEs? Because sometimes we hear the question other way around, that how can MSMEs comply with ESG? I believe that's a kind of wrong way to think, because at present what is happening is these MSMEs are giving the products under the radar, and it's sometimes economically also making sense for them because of the price that has been offered by the global consumers as well as the buyers. So we really not should not overlook that reality as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the intervention. So let me move to Dr. Mehruna Islam. I mean, based on your experience working with the government and the private sector, what do you think? I mean, where are the gaps, especially if you can talk about the policy gaps? I mean, even if Bangladesh tried to have a national framework for responsible business conduct, right? And I think it was a struggle for sure. So what happened? I mean, why can't we have a unified action plan for something like, responsible business conduct, which is have some connection to ESG? Where do we lack when we talk about the policies?
Thank you, Mr. Bhai. Yes, you raised this issue. We have struggled a lot on having this national action plan on business and human rights. And then we changed the narrative to responsible business conduct from business and human rights. So where is ESG in this RBC? Actually, RBC, or responsible business conduct, would be an umbrella under which ESG would be a part. And when we talk about policy, Bangladesh has a lot of policies, regulations, act, and I always say that the Bangladesh Labor Act is very comprehensive, including all social issues into that, labor issues, child labor, and gender issues, even small issues like daycare centers, dormitories, those are also there. But one thing is there is lack of implementation. We have always heard that our enforcement agencies are not equipped enough. They don't have the human resource and don't have the technical knowledge to implement these policies that we have. We also have environmental regulations, a lot. But at the same thing, lack of implementation is the main challenge. Regarding ESG, I would say this has been, but in Bangladesh, it is still at a very nascent stage. And there are a lot of we see happening. Once you said you were frustrated, and I've also heard that there are a lot not happening. But I would say a lot is happening, but we don't know. They're happening at a very fragmented manner. We got from DBL, we got a person here, our audience. We heard that Urmi Group is working a lot on ESG. BGMAs has now developing ESG database. But are we all aware of this? I don't think so. And also on the RBC issue, I'm not coming to RBC. Let's keep on ESG. ESG database, that is the main thing we need. So for that, first we need policy, a national framework. Okay, a national framework that would be aligned with the global standard, but it has to be contextual. We need the social, environmental, governance, all these issues brought into the regulatory framework from national context. And also it should be aligned to the international standards, because we are working with the global community. Our buyers, suppliers are there, a very big part of the global supply chain. So we also need to align with the global standards. So, but the policies have to be, we still need, there are gaps in the policies. Now, coming to the National Action Plan, what do I say? There has been lack of willingness or some kind of reluctance to bring this issue into the policy. Recently, the CSRD or CSR Triple D EU regulations, those have increased the awareness within the government, within the private sector. Now the businesses are very aware, and they need to bring in these contexts into their policies, company policies. And it's my pleasure to share with you that we are working with the Ministry of Commerce. UNDP is working with the Ministry of Commerce, and Ministry of Commerce has recently established an RBC cell, under which we will bring this into that cell's work, the awareness raising activity, capacity development activity, developing ESG data sustainability reporting standards. So I hope now we can move forward, and it has to be done in a coordinated way rather than fragmented. It cannot be done in silo. I will always request the associations to share their knowledge. When we do something, I think I was, a few minutes back, I was telling to Gunjan that, and also our brother there from DBL, that I will do some case studies I want to develop. And it has to be shared among all the stakeholders that this is happening in Bangladesh. And I don't know to what extent our global supply buyers are aware of this, because, and also the SMEs. We have to think of that when we make any policy. Since our greatest segment is this, our SMEs, we need to think of them. So it has to be simplified, simple structure. The policy has to be that. So this policy gap is there, bringing in all these issues from international framework, making it into national context, and then making it simple for SMEs. So the policy, we need that, a national policy structure, framework. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Since we talked about data, so this is a serious issue. I mean, of course, in Bangladesh, data is a big issue. Whenever we talk about, I mean, like anything, data is a big issue for sure. So if we want to emphasize on, evidence-based or evidence-informed policy decisions or policy making, data becomes an issue. When we talk about ESG or sustainability reporting, data becomes an issue. So I would request, before going to Debashish Da, each of you, each one of you, if you can talk a little bit about this data issue. We can start from, Gunjan.
Thank you so much. What we have seen, we reviewed a couple of ESG reports. What we have seen is the indicators that we are using for the ESG report varies across the business, across the sector and everything. that makes it extremely difficult to compile the data on ESG reporting, right? And again, that leads to the problem that there is lack of nationally agreed framework for the ESG reporting. We need data, no doubt about that, but to get that data, we need to have a kind of nationally agreed framework for the ESG reporting. Once we have that ESG reporting, data collection, data pooling, and data aggregation can become very, very, very easier, right? So that's why I totally agree on the importance of data. And in absence of the data, we are unable to benchmark our ESG standard in the global level, right? Remember that Bangladesh is aiming to attract a lot of FDIs, a lot of international buyers. We are now integrating the global value chain for the government, but there is a huge potential to integrate in many sectors. Lack of ESG reporting, lack of that benchmarking exercise affecting businesses to integrate in the global value chain. That's a big loss actually. So urgent call for evidence-based decision in ESG is to have that kind of minimum benchmarking standard at the national level.
Tawhid bhai?
In data, what Bunyan said, in addition to that one challenge, the brother from Brazil is also here, is what we call it's audit fatigue. That is, different brands have different standards, and they came to the factories with asking different numbers. So it became really difficult for the factories. In addition to what we don't have a national agreed framework. Actually, international brands also do not have a very common framework or a common index through which they will get the data from the factories. So it's really difficult. And when I say in an environment where ESG is a kind of unfunded mandate for the suppliers. So this is really one point where we also collectively need to say to the brands and the global buyers to have a kind of standardized system through which the suppliers can comply. Thank you.
Yes, I think first a national coordinated mechanism under which unified ESG indicators, those are necessary. And KPIs, as you said, performance indicators. Then sectorally, we have the different impacts. So it has to be sectorally different. So at first, a nationally unified framework, then sectorally, the associations can come up. And for each sector, these ESG indicators can be developed. But capacity development on data compilation, that is very much necessary. And another thing is awareness among the producers, our suppliers, that sharing data, it will not be it will not give them bring any harm to them. But it has what the association BGMA is doing now. I don't think there is any representative here. BGMA is compiling the data and ESG data, and they have a bank. They're not circulating that among all stakeholders, but keeping it within the association. So that is good. First, it can be done at a pilot basis, and then when it is the producers see that it is bringing them good rather than harm, and their sustainability reporting is bringing them more competitiveness, more access to the markets, I think they would be interested to do that. So this has to be initiated. First, making indicators and then making them more aware that the benefits of ESG, the benefits of sharing data, and developing database for each company, which can be shared externally.
So let's talk about the talk about mainstreaming gender in this whole ESG discussion. So since IX is closely working with private sector and the government on orange bonds, let me ask you this, Devashita. I mean, gender and social equity metrics are, often absent from conventional ESG ratings, despite their centrality to inclusive development. So how are these dimensions being integrated into impact investment decisions in Bangladesh? This is one question. And what would take to mainstream a gender lens approach across the broader ESG finance market?
Thank you. So, First of all, thank you for arranging this kind of session, which is very important and required, and get all the stakeholders on board together to discuss. Before getting into this mainstreaming gender lens, I like to talk about a little more on the ESG thing because in Bangladesh, I used to be the head of CSR in Grameenphone many years back, where I tried to get a national CSR policy, which kind of I initiated, but I didn't conclude and complete. So, and CSR Center also tried to do that. So, since you have said that only 5% of the listed company are producing, less than 5% are producing ESG disclosure, and we have seen that there are some policy by central bank for the banks. So that's why CSR or sustainability from the banks are increasing for last many years, and that's kind of showing that if you have a national policy or framework, then things will thrive. So, ESG, so definitely we need it, but if you look at India, our neighboring country, the listed company has to spend 1 or 2% of net profit after tax for the social investments. So that's a humongous amount of money that we can bring into the system and do good for the company and the community and society at large. So that's one. And yes, coming back to my question, conventional ESG ratings are for large and listed corporates. So that doesn't trickle down to SMEs, and that's expensive for the SMEs, as you said it right. So and Bernard also said that we need a simplified structure to kind of make it chewable for the SMEs. So I'd like to talk about 30 seconds about IAX, who is IAX, because we are quite young and new in this country. We are one of the global leader in impact investment. We have operations in 60 different countries, and we have mobilized more than 500 million US dollars unlocked. We have got our own bond called WLB series, Women Livelihood Bond. That's called Orange Bond. Orange is a new thematic debt capital, a new asset class like green bond, invented and created by IAX globally. Now it's getting popular in many different countries. And in Bangladesh, we have just got an approval from Security Exchange Commission for the first orange bond in this country for Sajida Foundation. So that's quite a journey, I would say, because introducing a new asset class in a country like Bangladesh, where we all know the capital market situation. So it was a difficult journey, but we got it through. So, and I'm currently working on several green bonds and several orange bonds. So green and orange, and green will be for some of the big corporates like DBL. Not the DBL, but they are like DBL, and also green orange one for some MFIs, like finance institutes. So at IAX, we see gender inclusion as a risk management tool, not a social obligation, because we have seen from our WLB series, Women Livelihood Bond series, that when money goes to the organizations owned by So we see this as a risk management tool. If we spend money to those organizations, it's safer. We can tell that it will come back to us. So, and as a proof point, as we launched Sajida Bond, 100% bond proceeds will go to women-centric organizations. And we have identified, we have certain orange criteria, as we call it, which means certain leadership has to be women, certain employees has to be women, And also, the bond proceeds goes to those organizations. They will do either do products and services for women or run by women. And also, this is a intersectional bond. It's a climate action is also included here. So those organizations cannot do anything that will harm environment. So that's how we intersect climate, which is SDG 13, I guess, and SDG 5 women empowerment together in this. So what can we do to kind of mainstreaming gender lens metrics into our decisions? So we see regulators like Security Exchange Commission can embed gender metrics into the green, social, and orange bond taxonomy. And that's how you can really popularize this kind of stuff. And then financial organizations like banks, they are giving loans to many different organizations. So they have to start pricing gender risk into credit risk. If they can do that, then it will be ensured that really these gender metrics are being considered. And last but not the least, this gender data must be treated as investor grade information, not a development sector concern. So if we mainstream those data as monitored and checked by the investors, then banks will rethink and get those things into their consideration while giving the loans. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I will come back to our panelists, but let's open the floor right now. So the floor is open. Please raise your hands if you have any question over there. I can see. Oh, great microphone.
Good afternoon. My name is Junaid. So I would like to thank the panelists. I think it was a very new knowledge for me. So truly speaking, I was not too much aware of this agenda. So it was that learning experience for me. So thank you to the panelists. So I have a couple of questions. And since I'm very new to this agenda item, so maybe some question would feel very odd. So please pardon me. So from the discussion, what I realized that this is a global agenda, but in Bangladesh, some frontier firm, mostly RMG, is kind of following this standard of protocol and also reporting these things. So my question to the panelists is, and also the panelists also mentioned that there are EU protocol, USA protocol, so different countries, different protocols. So since the panelists are mostly from global organization, so is there any initiative to uniform the standards across the world? So maybe UNDP, ILO, they have global network. Can they bring this agenda as a uniform standard for all countries? And is it that one protocol can be applied for each industry, or is it different for garments and for other industry also? So this is one question. The another one is there was a discussion on the MSMEs. And in case of Bangladesh, MSMEs is mostly informal. So it seems some formal firms who are export oriented, they are maintaining some sort of protocols, but MSMEs, I think it would be too challenging because of this large informality in this sector. So then the next question, that is the final question from my side is, so Bangladesh has different law that panelists also mentioned. So are these law labor law, environment law, or industrial law are kind of aligned with this agenda, or is there any substantial reform needed in this law? So what is our national standard on this, and how much government is willing to do all of these things or bring forward this agenda? Thank you.
Who next?
Thank you. I'm Farhan, working in Sana. First of all, thank you for the very good discussion. I enjoyed it a lot. I didn't have very much work experience on ESG, but I heard about ESG sandbox, a regulatory sandbox, which has used for understanding the ESG institutional or dynamic or regulatory issues. I was thinking that can Bangladesh develop a regulatory or institutional sandbox with the help of leading organizations, for example, UNDP, ILO, and others, and also the think tanks that can help to resolve the upcoming issues. For example, discussions have talked about the data reporting and unethical behaviors and pressures. These can be, I think, used in the technical way, experimental way. Whether this can actually be implemented in Bangladesh, or if it is possible, then how? Thank you.
Should we take one or two more questions, or you want to respond and then? Okay. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you, panelists. This is Nazmur working election in Bangladesh. I was thinking, in fact, when you were presenting on the different topics, I was thinking, what are the objectives of discussion ESG in the context of Bangladesh? Yes, most of the discussion are covering around or centering around probably manufacturing sector or government, bond sector or financing sector. However, I was thinking what is the localization form of ESG? How we are connecting it with the grassroots communities? How this governance is a part of the related with the transition? How this is being related with the environmental destruction? What is the cost of the environmental destruction, and what is the face of climate governance? What is the face of environmental governance? I know this is the topic you can actually mold in many ways. You can see it in diverse lenses. But for us, in this context, so what are the most important elements that we need to focus on when you're talking about ESG? Particularly, we are facing a lot of kind of climate vulnerabilities. We are facing the job losses. We are facing the environmental destruction. So, what are the focus we need to put in terms of the government policy formulation, and how people are being engaged in this whole process. So these are the actually questions in my mind. I know it's a lot of questions, but to me it is huge actually. And then it would be very good to have some focus on considering all these elements. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you for all the questions. Panelists want to respond? Then we will go back. Yeah.
So I start. Let me be brief and pass it to colleagues. So, first of all, is uniform standard possible for ES? Yes, very much possible. Let me give you a quick reflection on that. So, whatever the standard, whether it is US-led expectation like Nirapon does, or EU-led expectation, or India also have that kind of their own standard, Japan is coming up with this. All standards are framed in three global instruments. That's OECD guidelines, UN Guiding Principle on Business and Human Rights, and ILO Multinational Declaration, which is like all of these standards 90% overlap. So that means there is a globally agreed framework for the ESG. Why we are being asked with the multiple countries, multiple things? Because we don't have national standard. So that's why, again, we do not have that nationally agreed framework for the ESG reporting. That's why the country is facing with this audit fatigue or different standard fatigue. Okay, you don't have this, so you comply with our CS-DD by EU. You comply with this, you comply with that. That's coming up. This is more likely to come in the days to come, right? So that's why it's important. It's possible to have that integrated framework. For example, in the RNG sectors, ILO is implementing that Better Work program, which is like mostly looking at the labor compliance, right? I mean, once you are Better Work factory, you don't have to worry about other compliance, right? That's the kind of framework that we are looking to. We wanted to translate those internationally agreed ESG framework so that there is harmonization of the indicator reporting framework and everything there. MSMEs and informal sector, I think let's see. I mean, let's shift the gear a bit, right? I mean, we have been, even our expert audience, we have been looking ESG as a compliance tool. It's not a compliance tool. It's a productivity tool, right? And we need to shift our attention from grow dirty, clean later kind of attitude for the enterprise development to grow clean and tidy and neat from the very beginning. So that way we can see a business dynamism, growth, job creation, social welfare, community welfare, and everything there. At the moment, our orientation to MSMEs is do whatever you want, necessity-driven entrepreneurship, do whatever you want, survive, whether you pay 2,000 taka salary per month, whether you make people work like 7 days in a week. I mean, without any respect, we are adopting that kind of enterprise practice. What is the result? Low productivity, low growth, low business dynamism, overall resource trap. We call it micro enterprise trap. If you see the economy at the moment, 60% of the business unit are falling into those kind of micro enterprise trap, which is neither helping society nor helping economy. Why this country has that tax to GDP ratio that low? Because of those micro enterprise trap. So embedding ESG practice, embedding sustainability practice is not only a compliance tool, but it's a productivity tool. That's why it should apply whether irrespective of whether they are formal enterprise, informal enterprise, wherever they are growing. But the challenge is, where do they get to learn this ESG practice? That does not exist on the MSMEs. Does SME Foundation provide those kind of ESG guidelines, tools, and practice? I doubt. Does BC provide? Without the chambers provide, there is no non-existent of that kind of service. That's the missing link. But it should be promoted as inherent business quality there. That's why it's important there. Regulatory, I mean, laws aligned, yes, pretty much aligned. Bangladesh context, I must say, at least from the labor law side of things, the recent amendment of the labor law, which just Parliament just passed that ordinance. And for ESG, corporate sustainability, there are 10, fundamental convention of ILO and 32 UN conventions, right? That 32 UN convention has to be embedded, and Bangladesh has embedded all these 32 conventions in its laws and rules and everything. It's ready there. And with that pressure of the LDC graduation and everything, country adopted those. But are they in practice is a big question, right? Again, coming to that, law exists, rule exists, system exists. Are they in practice is always a big question in the context of Bangladesh. But laws are aligned that can be brought into coherent national framework. That's possible there, right? So regulatory sandbox, perfect idea. Actually, there has been some discussion on the regulatory sandbox for the ESG. I think rather than again another experimentation of the ESG regulatory sandbox, what we are trying to do, I mean, together with UNDP, is to come up with some kind of RBC, national guidelines for the RBC, to which ESG will be embedded as operational tool of RBC, so that and all the support service around that, right? Whether it's SME support, sectoral support, whatever the support service is required, we want to develop that kind of national level guidelines, that ESG is operational tool, and devise that support service there, showcasing the achievement, showcasing result, supporting supply chains, and supporting the people to advocate for that supply chain, studying the demand side of the ESG compliance and everything there. So that's something that we are looking into. And Nazmul, I think I touched most of your points there already, because once you reorient ESG from compliance tool to the productivity tool, most of these questions gets answered. The biggest challenge for SMEs here are most of the SMEs are running on the sweat capital, right? Sweat capital, because they pay very low to the workers. Even entrepreneurs earn very low, to be fair on the entrepreneurs. So neither workers are benefiting nor entrepreneurs are benefiting. It's a survivalist forms, a lot of dominance of the survivalist forms, and that low productivity trap is trapping them time and again, repeated in that low productivity trap. So embedding ESG will not only make them compliant, but boost their productivity, energy efficiency, labor productivity, production efficiency, and everything, so that they can skip out of that productivity trap. So that service does not exist, but that will be the core essence of the ESG. I want to pass it to Ujjwal.
Super.
I'm done with it. Yes.
Okay. I will address only the national standard part. That is, actually, I'm a bit more practitioner, so I will just shed light on what I have seen in the factories. So there are some interesting observations. For example, I've seen factories with collapsible gate, which is a very rate mark for an RMG factory. It's actually not even SEDEX certified, but their products are going to brands indirectly because they are also supplying to the export-oriented factories, and the products are going to the brands. And there are dyeing factories I have seen where firsthand in this year also people the child laborers are working with hazardous chemicals, and they also supply to the brands, international brands. They have a very well furnished affiliated factory. Just beside that factory, there is a very well furnished factory from where they actually receive the orders. So another thing is when there are factories where in the production line, if you go, you will not feel that you live in Bangladesh. You feel like it's like China, Vietnam, or any other European country. You should feel proud that these sort of production floors exist. So, and also Bangladesh has the most LEED certified factories probably in the world currently. So there are both parts of story. I'm not really sure what's there in the law, but when we go to the field, we see these sort of realities, and we really need to understand who is doing what and why is actually the things are happening the way it should. It's actually now happened. Thank you.
I think laws, alignment with regulations, international global agenda. Dalit Bhai has mentioned the actual scenario. So where do we stand? The law is there, but the implementation is not there. So we have to look into that. The first two questions have been, I think, very clearly answered by Gunjan. I want to respond to the third question, why we are discussing on ESG. I think after some point of time, at some point of time, after a few years, it will be a matter of sustenance. Sustaining in terms of for the manufacturers, for our industries, our businesses, and that means sustenance of our workers. So if our markets, our industries do not sustain in the global with the global supply chain, what will happen? Our industries will not be competitive enough if they do not report according to the ESG framework, and they will not be able to sustain in the global supply chain. With many businesses, we know that after the Rana Plaza, what happened when the Accord and Alliance came, and there was this drastic what's going on monitoring, many factories closed down. So why? Because they were not up to the standard. So now that globally, since these evolving regulations are causing the change and change of the level, the standards, our businesses, our industries have to be up to that standard. And now we are only looking at RMG, but what about the other industries, the leather? There is also, ESG reporting practice in some very big leather factories. So there's to some extent practice, but not in any other industries as per my knowledge. So this is very important for our sustenance and trade competitiveness, of course. Trade competitiveness within the global supply chain, and then sustenance of our workers, our huge workforce. So this is ESG is very much necessary for our competitiveness, for our whole industry, for the economy. And after
Can I ask a subtle question?
Yes, please.
Sorry. So we understand. Right.
So we understand now the whole discourse is driven by the demand side, actually demand. Let's say, I know the importer, they said you have to practice all these things. So what are the supply side ecosystem that we are expecting through, to develop in the context of Bangladesh? So it's also important. Now, let's say if we cannot develop the, this kind of supply side ecosystem in our context, so how do you see the whole system, whole sector will be surviving? Or I don't know, but it is sometimes to me it's a big dilemma to me. Otherwise we will be only responding to the what the buyer are saying, or we should have our own ecosystem that that is being in place and we develop ourselves. So I don't know.
Thank you. Thanks for raising it. DBL brother is here. So I would say this is initiated. We have been responding to the buyers. And now, since to some extent these standards are now being developed by the industries, by our industries, by themselves. Now we need one unified structure framework for ourselves based on local context. And so that, and it has to be strong enough, as Gunjan said, based on OECD guidelines, based on ILO conventions, based on rights. So it will be nothing new coming out of nothing. It will be based on those three standards, but it will bring in national context and businesses and all the stakeholders. So we have to develop something for ourselves that has to be acceptable to the global community. And we are hopeful for that.
Thank you, panelists. Any burning questions from the floor? Any question? Over here. Okay. So another 10 minutes.
I work at Center for Entrepreneurship in Bragg University, and I'm part of two ESG projects. One is the Map in Bangladesh, which collects RNG factory ESG information from all over the Bangladesh. And recently we are collaborating with BIGD to develop ESG platform for DGMEA. So my question was Mr. Gunjan. He mentioned about that data is needed so that we can have a nationally agreed framework. My question is that how you will know that if any framework is developed, how will you know that it will be agreed within the stakeholders, as we know that there are already different disagreements with them in different RNG industry issues. So what will be the process to make them in an agreement and take them enough and leave them to follow a framework, while we are seeing, and even Mr. Tawhid from Swift Contact gave an example, that is still compliance issue, which has been a burning issue for a decade. We are seeing that still it's not maintained properly. Thank you. Should I take this now?
You can, or any other question from the floor? You want to ask a question? Yeah, go ahead.
As far as we have noticed that green bond, orange bond already will be introduced in our capital market. We know the reality of our capital market is not working in the actual function. So is it promoting promoting ESG practices in our capital market? That will be helpful for our enterprise who will promote ESG in our capital market. The condition of our capital market is ready to take all these changes or not.
All right. Any question from the floor? All right, I think, please go ahead.
Let me take a quick response to that. So, yes, we agree that there has been a very interest reporting framework, reporting indicator for ESG by different actors. BGMA itself reports on the standard set up by the NERA, standard set up by RSC, standard set up by Better Work. There are multiple standards there, and it's certainly not an easy way to do it. But if you see globally, most of them, especially those framework that looks into the impact, are aligned to the GRI framework. So 96% of the CSR, ESG reporting that happens from the government sector. We also did a bit of stock taking on through BGMA, WikiMEA. 96% of those indicators are aligned to the GRFM, but GRI is itself not endorsed. And there are also ISSP framework, which is mostly looking the financial risk side, right? Financing risk side. So there is also emerging reporting in that financing risk side of that. So although there are varied interest, various country group and various industries, so bringing them together to discuss through, there has been some effort in the past as well. It's not that difficult. That's why we are talking about the tripartite forum where employers, workers, and government meet together, have that through that social dialogue process. We agree into that, look in that international framework, look into the current contextual reality, which Maruna actually highlighted repeatedly, looking to those two aspects and looking to the current legal, institutional, regulatory status. It's not that difficult to come up with kind of nationally agreed framework. There are benchmarking exercises already happened, so it's possible there. So I'm very optimistic on that. Capital market, Derasis.
Yeah. All right. So there was a question on the readiness of our capital market. So let me ask you, of course, you will talk about this, but what are the innovative instruments that we can look for that could be effective for Bangladesh?
I'd like to answer Gunjan's first, that capital market thing, the readiness and stuff. Gunjan, I was listening to you carefully, and it was a masterclass for me. Honestly speaking, it's excellent. So coming back to the capital market readiness, I'll answer this question in a different way, which is we have to start somewhere. Yes, we don't have the orange or green bond taxonomy or framework. I have been working in UNDP country office for a few years with Mirnapa and also Gunjan. We used to work together. So when I was in UNDP, we submitted the taxonomy, the orange-green taxonomy and the framework to Security Exchange Commission. They're kind of looking into it, reviewing it for last 1 year, and I hope and pray that they will approve and give life to it, so that we have the taxonomy, we have the framework where a lot of green and orange bond issuances can come in. So, but then again, you can ask, how did you go for the first orange bond in the market? This is a case-to-case basis. This was an exception. We have the guidelines, so we submitted all the guidelines and frameworks for this Sajida orange bond, and then we got the approval. But it would be easier for other issuers when the taxonomy and the guideline and the framework are approved. So that's one. And the second question is, what are the instruments that we can really deploy for SMEs in this country? So we have got globally there are a lot of instruments, but we can really bring some of them in Bangladesh, starting with orange bond. So we selling this. So we hope to conclude the selling of the first orange bond by next 1 month. So it will go entire 158 crore taka BDT will go to the women and SMEs. That's one. So number one is we can go for orange bond kind of instrument, which will go to the SMEs. Number two is the blended finance that Zubair was mentioned in his inauguration speech. So where there can be a layered thematic debt capital, which means there is a first layer called first loss. So where government or DFI can come in with the first loss layer. If the first loss layer is backed by the government or DFIs, then private sector can have the courage to invest here because they will think that my money is secured. That's why the second layer comes into place, which is by the private sector, and that's how we can create a blended structure for the SME investment. And third one is guarantee.
So here also we can create a capital where we can get the guarantee by the government, sovereign guarantee, or by the DFIs, Development Finance Institutes. And then the private sector, then their money is secured. So recently we have done from IAS innovative guarantee, small token, one transaction to see how it goes. So we have put a guarantee fund to offshore banking unit of Prime Bank in Singapore. And we got a startup company who is doing very good agri-tech. So we kind of had a negotiation with Prime Bank that he will give 2 times of the money we have put in Singapore offshore banking unit and convert into Bangla Taka and give it to this company. So we successfully did that. So I mean, Prime Bank has kind of done it because they have a guarantee. So if something goes wrong, their risk will be covered by the guarantee. So we have tried and tested this innovative model of guarantee with one small SME, but it should be multiple times. It should be much bigger scale. So orange bond and then blended finance and then guarantee can be immediately kind of tested and trialed in the country. Thank you.
Just 30 seconds on whether nationally active framework is possible or not. China is currently having a national standard disclosing practice, that is CSDS. So as they are our competitor, I think as you're working with BJMEA, you can explore that whether we can have a standard disclosing practice. Challenge is the price that China is offering. We are not offering that price. If we start offering that price, then buyers will not take orders from us. So, but still, there are nationally agreed frameworks. India is working on that as well.
All right. So we are almost near to the conclusion. So I will ask one question to each of the panelists. I mean, of course, Gunjan, you are hitting sixes today, so we will come to you last.
That's right.
So, all right. So my question to Mehruna Appa, I mean, of course, you talked about policies and the implementation. I mean, there is a disconnection for sure between private sector and government. Of course, you mentioned that private sector is getting onboarded. They're interested. But from my experience, I can tell you that when we try to, bring private sector and government into a single platform, it's difficult. So there is a disconnection for sure. So and of course there is a need for sensitization, awareness building. So from that perspective, where do we stand? What could we do? This is the question to you. And to Tawhid Bhai, based on your work, what market level barriers need to be removed for ESG to become a business norm rather than a buyer-driven compliance requirement. So let's hear from you both, and then we will go to Gunjan.
Okay, so what is our role? What UNDP can do, and there would be the role of different stakeholders, different roles. What you can do, what the research organizations can do. I want to give one example. When sustainability or RBC, we didn't see for 5 years that there is no awareness, no interest in the private sector of this. I say that we have to think from the financial point of view. What's the benefit there? Okay? So why as this, I was saying, why ESG? The same, why RBC? So we conducted a study, the economic implications of RBC, showing what benefits that will bring to the companies. This is one thing. Now, what research organizations can do, I would request you to bring in the issue here, more research on different aspects of the ESG, showing it to the government, to the different stakeholders, how it will benefit after LDC graduation when there is loss of trade preference. How will this benefit our businesses and the country, the economy as a whole? What UNDP can do, we are willing to, and I believe that we have to some extent been possible of this. UNDP and I are working together. When UN agencies work together, we are able to bridge the gap between the government and the private sector. And I believe that this RBC cell that we are supporting, facilitating for the Ministry of Finance, I believe that would be a good platform to bring in both the stakeholders and all the stakeholders on one table. Now, there are also that has been able to bring, will be able to bring all the stakeholders together to one table is their obligation to the international community. But stakeholders, as I said, private sector is now becoming more aware. Now they want to even draft a national action plan. Okay, so they also want one regulatory framework, one national guideline, which they can show, they can demonstrate that other country has got this national guideline. And the same thing, the government is also bringing in this issue into their consideration. So this can be our role as the UN agencies. We can work on this, and the research organizations can do this. And the biggest responsibility is with the private sector. You have initiated this. I believe that there is in the BGMA, there is an RBC Responsible Business Hub that is working on this. I also got to know that the Leather Association, they're also going to develop an RBC unit cell within their association. So this is great that our private sector businesses are becoming more aware of this, and we can coordinate it in a coordinated way. We can work on this.
The question has been already a bit addressed by Gunjan. That is, when we see ESG as a compliance tool, it will create a burden, of course, for the suppliers. But it's actually a productivity tool, or it's actually a business tool through which you can actually imply that in your business, make business decisions, have a solid and robust ROI. But where the problem is, if I give again a micro level example, that is, for example, the cost of compliance. For a chemical factory to avail a certain type of certification, I'm not naming it, like X certification, they need to give BDT 70 lakh per year just to be certified. That's the cost of certification, not to restructure their factories and that cost, that readiness cost. It's just to avail that certification to actually provide the products to some enlisted brands. The brands are asking for that certification, and the cost is BDT 70 lakh per year. Now, when we dig down into the layers of the cost, we saw that it's interesting. Majority of the cost is actually the overheads of the experts and the international experts. So if we can really create a local capacity, if we can create the local experts here who can actually certify within that standards, then the cost of compliance will automatically be less. So these sort of in these sort of spaces, we all need to act, including the government, the academia, that how can we create sustainability professionals and we create an ecosystem where everyone, it will not be a kind of supply driven mechanism. It will be kind of a shared responsibility where everyone is playing their role. So that's how tool to a more productive tool.
I'd like to add to it. I mean, for any kind of bond, there is a requirement of having a second party opinion. We call it SPO. And usual charge of SPO from an international organization like S&P Global or Sustainalytics, it charges approximately $20,000. So, and IIX itself charges that kind of money. But in Bangladesh, since we have been doing with Bangladesh office, IIX office, so it was much less. So, we have to get the local expertise so that, these kind of charges can be lowered in a greater extent.
Of course, you mentioned, you talked about some of the recent positive developments like Bangladesh Labor Amendment Ordinance and ILO conventions. Also, you were very cautious about the implementation, right? So let me ask you, a decade after major industrial disasters, reshaped Bangladesh's labor governance landscape. What structural changes have proven durable, and what must ESG adoption do differently to avoid, becoming another compliance exercise that fails to reach the worker? Plus, how social dialogues could, contribute to this cause? Thank you.
$1 million. Is that a lot had changed after Rana Plaza collapse at the system level, and that change has reached only to frontier funds. Somebody mentioned about the frontier funds space, but it has. But now with corporate sustainability due diligence directive that European Union passed, where 80% of our export concentration of ready-made garment is, that requires the entire cleansing of the value chain, right? Entire cleansing of the value chain, and that requires that local traceability mechanism. So in that area, we're not. Long way to go because the institutional setup and mechanism in Bangladesh, needless to say, it's so biased towards the frontier fund on the ready-made garment sector. Country, I'm sorry to use that term, but country does not really recognize other sectors, other segment of the business, second tier, third tier of the business, and everything there. So many issues are like hidden in that, like window dressing of the big frontier funds there. So that requires a bit of a structural change. One example that I want to give, also reflecting on Azmul's question that how could that be locally driven? The solution comes only when this compliance orientation, not even compliance orientation, that the ESG orientation is locally driven. How can that happen? Who are the sufferers for the ESG orientation? Bangladesh used to export a lot of shrimp. 10 years down the line, currently, why the shrimp has gone down? Is it because low production? No. It's because the shrimp produced in Bangladesh are unable to meet that export requirement. Why we always have that hue and cry for selling of the raw hides in the leather and footwear sector during the Qurbani Eid, whereas Bangladesh imports a lot of hide from Australia, New Zealand, Italy. Why? Because the producers there are unable to meet the compliance requirement there. So that is the local demand. That creates the local demand. Now, why there are increasing instances of the industrial relation like disruption, strike, and everything, even on the small and medium enterprises there? Why? It's because people are getting that awareness, consensus on fundamental principle and rights at work. Why there is a lot of friction happening between society and the enterprises? Because in the past, it was accepted. Business are big people, we are small people. That was accepted. Now, that acceptance is no longer there. People are becoming aware. So that is creating increasing pressure for businesses to do business differently. That's where local demand is coming from. And that needs to come. And for ILO, the effective instrument for that is the social dialogue process. So how do we do that? What is social dialogue? It's not about dialogue in the society. It's about tripartite dialogue. We call it tripartite because we have workers, employers, and the government sitting together and discussing about the work-related issues. How can work be more ethical, more rewarding, more growing, more promoting? So in that regard, we are partnering with the various business chambers, engaging corporate businesses in terms of that discussion, and also sharing some of the ideas, what could be the benchmarking exercise, trying to get the ideas from Vietnam, for example. I mean, on the point you mentioned, why auditing in Vietnam is so cheap than auditing in Bangladesh, right? Why do some international experts charge $800 per day in Bangladesh versus $300 in Vietnam, right? And why the cost of compliance is low in India compared to Bangladesh? Because India says that we have our corporate standards, our standards aligned to the global. If you abide by it, fine. If you don't abide by it, go for it, right? That boldness, that confidence, that is required here, and for that we need that again national benchmarking exercise, which we do not have now, right? Businesses are dealt as part and parcel, bits and pieces, that loses the collective voice of the businesses and impose a lot of undue cost of compliance. And same thing happens for the worker side, same thing happens for the society side. So that social dialogue mechanism is the vehicle for us to promote that effective demand for the cost of compliance, effective demand for the ESG practices and everything there. So that's my submission.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you, panelists. Thank you, participants. It was very engaging and interactive, I believe. So as I mentioned in my presentation that ESG is not a reporting exercise. So we all need to, come together to, strengthen ESG practices in Bangladesh. From that point of view, SANEM has started this sustainability center. Under this sustainability center, we are regularly organizing this kind of, conversations. So we will continue that and hope to see you again. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.